Hey guys, in this video we're going to learn how to calculate velocity by measuring slope of the line, okay? So we have four lines that are connected, A, B, C, and D, that represent an object's motion. A is when it's going really fast forward because it's an upward slope and it's steep. B is forward but a little slower because it's not as steep, but it's still going up. C is when the object is stopped. And D is when it goes fast backwards, okay? We don't really know whether A or D is faster. They're both pretty steep, but D is definitely backwards because it's a negative slope or decline. But we're going to basically calculate slope for all four of these lines, and each slope will give the velocity in unit of meters, because the distance is measured in meters, over seconds, all right? So the first thing we need to do is mark the beginning and end of each line segment. So here, this line is at 0, 0, okay? The first 0 is x and the second 0 is the y, okay? This point here is at the end of segment A, and the x is 5, and the y is 15 over here. So that is also the beginning of B. So we could go to the end of B and mark the end of that line segment is at a time of 15 on the x and a distance on the y of 20. All right. At the end of letter C, it's 5 seconds later in time, 15 to 20. So now the x is 20, but the y is still 20. And at the end of segment D, right here, we're back down to a distance of 0. That's the y, though. Remember, it's x, then y. What x are we at here? Well, we could estimate that we're at about 30. Some of these problems will require some estimation. That's okay. Okay, so we marked the beginning and end of each line, so that way we'll be able to take a slope of each line. So let's start with section A. Okay, the slope, the point slope formula is what we're going to use, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. The y's are really distance and the x's are really time, okay? So y2 is the first thing we'll plug in. y2 is the y that is at the end of segment A. Okay, so here's the end of segment A, and y is the second number in parentheses, 15, okay? Minus y1, that is 0. x2 comes from the second dot, not this one, this one. So x2 is from the x-axis, so that's 5. And x1 is where it started, from the x, that's 0. So here, 15 minus 0 over 5 minus 0, it's easy when things start at 0, 0. You could just do 15 over 5, which equals 3. And the unit is meters per second, because meters was the unit on the top for distance, and seconds was the unit on the bottom for time. So our answer has a unit, not miles per hour, but meters per second. Okay? So segment B, let's do. Again, we're going to use the point slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Remember, y2 and x2 come from the end point on the line segment. So that the end of B, it's 15, 20. 15 is the x, so that's x2. 20 is the y, so that's y2. All right? So this is, at the beginning of B, it's x1 and y1. So x1 is 5, and y1 is 15. So we'll do 20 minus 15 on top gives us 5, and 15 minus 5 on the bottom gives us 10. So 5 over 10 And again, it's a positive slope, but this time it's 0.5 meters per second. 5 divided by 10 is a half. So we can see A is faster than B because it's steeper, but when we calculate the slope, we also get a higher number for velocity than letter B, 2. Letter C, you could just look at it and say, oh, if it's not moving, if it's a flat line, I know it's stopped. So the velocity is 0, and that's okay if you go ahead and do that, but I'm going to carry out the calculation anyway. The y's are both the same. They're both 20 at the second part in each parentheses. So 20 minus 20. And then the first part in each parentheses, it's 20 minus 15. So 20 minus 20 on top is 0, and 20 minus 15 is 5. 0 over 5 is just 0. Okay? And letter D, it's going backwards because it's a decline. When it goes backwards, that's called a negative velocity. So we should end up also with a negative slope, a negative number for our slope when there's a decline. Let's see if that happens. y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. y2 and x2 are at the end of the line. Okay? So x2 is 30. y2 is 0. Now, x1 and y1 are at the beginning of the line. So that's 20, 20. All right, x1 is 20. And at the second part of the parentheses is y1. That's also 20. So on the top, we get 0 minus 20 is negative 20. And on the bottom, 30 minus 10 is positive 10. And then we get negative 20 over positive 10 gets you negative 2 meters per second. Then that negative indicates we are going in the direction of backwards. That's what a negative means for velocity. So we could say now that A was certainly steeper than letter D because the absolute value of its velocity, 3 meters per second, was greater than the absolute value of D. So A is faster than D. But if D ended up being negative 4, we would say that D is faster than A. So the absolute value of these numbers will tell you basically how fast the object was going.